one thing I have noticed about practicing more with a revolver is this is, so I want to get your take on this. And I would say this probably extends to just about anything that really forces you to work a double action trigger consistently. It helps a lot in all the other aspects of handgun shooting skill. So, what's your take on that?
No, I 100% agree with that. I if you can shoot a double action revolver well, you can shoot any semi-automatic striker fired handgun well. Like that is and the reason for that is the trigger pull is so much more difficult to master. It's so much easier during the course of a really good revolver that isn't like a high-end custom gun will have, anywhere from an 8 to a 10-pound trigger in it, right?
Hmm.
And the so if you can rapidly press an 8-pound trigger to the rear without pulling your sights off target, now make that trigger, 3.5 pounds or 4 pounds even, and make the distance of travel, a third of what it is on a wheel gun. It's gonna be really, really easy to do. And what I found is that when I take a break from shooting revolvers, because every year I'm like, okay, I've shot, 15,000 rounds to wheel guns. And it was like, at no point did I even think about my trigger press, like the whole match, because the DA press is the same as what I'm always doing, and then all of a sudden I've got a 2.5 pound single action pull, and I'm just like bang, 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 and it makes things a lot easier. Because if you can manage that really difficult trigger press, the easy trigger press is going to be a piece of cake. And the other thing that it teaches you to do that has been hugely, hugely beneficial for me is to not ride the reset,
Mm.
because there's no if you want to shoot a revolver fast, and this is something that Jerry's talked about, that everybody who's good at this has talked about, is as soon as that shot breaks, I am racing my finger to the trigger guard because I need to get off the trigger, like to let that trigger return spring have as much power as it needs to reset that trigger as quickly as possible, so I can well, I'm hitting the thing, like my trigger control. But that's the big thing for me with revolvers is if you can shoot a revolver well, most other handguns will be very easy for you. Well, not very easy, but they'll be easier for you to shoot, right? You're going to be able to master that trigger pull, which is why I tell people, hey, if you want a dry fire machine, get a Taurus 856 Toro. We're a 3-inch compact frame revolver, and it's optics ready. Put a plate on it, put the cheapest Hollow Sun K footprint dot that you can find on it, and then just dry fire with that. And you're gonna be like, is that really what's happening during my trigger pull? Is your dot does friggin' figure eights all over the place?
Maybe I should do something because, like, I agree. That would be really telling to see the dot in an optic window and exactly what it's doing movement wise as I'm pressing the trigger. Right now I'm looking at iron sights and it tells the same story. It's just you got to be a little more discerning and really
Hmm.
watching it carefully to get that same level of detail information. But I like how you didn't just talk about practicing with a double action revolver trigger on the trigger press is beneficial, but also just learning to get things reset quickly too, being part of that equation. That's something I was just talking about in my class over the weekend about, hey guys, like when you watch me running my trigger, especially like a bill drill, like that finger is coming off. And
Hmm.
so if you're still stuck in that mode of riding that reset, uh, let's break that, because usually the thing that we hear, at least I hear this, Caleb, is people will say something like, "Well, that's just wasted energy, wasted motion. It's less efficient to just only go to the or to go beyond the reset point." And I'm like, maybe so. However,
I mean,
have
if
you
I'm
seen Jerry work a trigger?
yeah. But at the same time, I'm shooting a double action revolver in the low point .2 splits, right? So I don't know how
Yeah.
much faster I can, like, I am with the guns that I have, and the way that they're set up, I'm pretty much at the mechanical speed limit of that, and I'm coming all the way off the trigger to do that.
Yeah.
But and I think the big thing for me about pin and reset, and why I am so adamantly opposed to it was something I picked up from Ernest in one of his classes, where he said, the biggest problem with it isn't that it's slow, is that if you consistently train to shoot on the reset, you are getting your permission to shoot again from the reset and not from your sights. Like,
Mhm.
if my permission to shoot again is feeling that click in my trigger, and I've trained myself to do that, like, oh, ride the reset, click, bang, then that's not nearly as beneficial as letting go of the trigger, getting permission from my sights, and then initiating another clean trigger press, right?
Mhm.
Glock invented this idea of the tactile reset as a thing because their gun has a really loud click, right? So it's very interesting to see how that infected pistol shooting. And you do still see it in things like precision rifle, where they'll shoot and they'll exhale and let go of the trigger to the reset point, and then inhale and then press again.
Um, the whole, like, especially dry firing with a revolver, one thing that I've, you know, and we've all probably struggled at some point, either ourselves or teaching others with this, teaching shooters to manage their sights while pressing the trigger. It When we have shorter, lighter weight triggers, perhaps with a defined wall, things of that nature, the tendency I seem to come across, Caleb, is that they'll align the sights and they're like, "Yep, that's good enough," and they may be very well prepped on the trigger, or at least taking up the slack, and they're at the wall, and they're like, "Yep, okay, sights are aligned. Okay, whack bang," you know.
Hmm.
And, I'm like, "No, no, 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 like, you're separating these processes of aiming the gun from triggering the gun, and we need those 2 things to happen, together." Like, in other words, we continue aiming or managing the sights while we press the trigger. That's the other thing I really like about working with a revolver or a double action trigger, is because, like, then you're literally watching and trying to maintain those sights as you're applying pressure until it goes off.